The pain rips through me like a serrated blade, but it's nothing compared to the words that just left my husband's mouth. I'm still catching my breath, sweat-soaked and trembling, when Adam steps forward, his expensive suit perfectly pressed, despite the 12 hours we've spent in this delivery room. I want a DNA test. His voice is flat, emotionless, like he's ordering coffee, not questioning the paternity of our newborn daughter. The nurse freezes, her hands still cradling our baby, my baby. The room seems to shrink. The beeping monitors, suddenly too loud, too intrusive. Dr. Collins looks up from his charts, his weathered face creasing with concern. Adam, what are you talking about? My voice sounds strange, distant, like it belongs to someone else. He won't meet my eyes. Instead, he stares at our daughter. 7 pounds, 4 ounces of perfection, with cold calculation. You heard me, McKenna. I want proof she's mine. The accusation hangs in the air like poison gas. 12 years of marriage, reduced to this moment. I want to scream, to throw something, to make him feel even a fraction of the pain shooting through my chest. Instead, I laugh. It's an ugly sound, raw and bitter. Get out. The words taste like metal in my mouth. Get out before I call security. Mrs. Harrison, Dr. Collins starts, but Adam cuts him off. I have every right to be here, and every right to request this test. He pulls out his phone, fingers flying over the screen. My lawyer says, Your lawyer? The words explode from me. You've been talking to your lawyer while I was in labor? A slight flush creeps up his neck, the only sign that he's even capable of shame anymore. I've been preparing for this moment for weeks. Weeks. The word echoes in my head. While I was picking out nursery colors and folding tiny onesies, my husband was planning this ambush. The realization hits me like a physical blow. The nurse, bless her, steps between us. Sir, perhaps we should continue this discussion outside. No. I force myself to sit up straighter, ignoring the protest from my aching body. Let him stay. Let him watch the test. Let him see exactly how wrong he is. Adam's expression doesn't change, but something flickers in his eyes. Disappointment, relief. I can't tell anymore. I used to know every micro-expression, every tell. When did my husband become a stranger? I'll arrange it immediately, Dr. Collins says, his tone carefully neutral. Though I must say, in my 30 years of practice, just do it, Adam snaps. He straightens his tie, a nervous habit I once found endearing. The sooner we know the truth, the better. The truth. As if he has any idea what that word means anymore. I look down at our daughter, my daughter, sleeping peacefully in the bassinet, unaware of the storm brewing around her. Her tiny fingers are curled into fists, her dark hair already showing signs of curl, just like mine. Fine, I say, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. Do the test. But when it proves what I already know, don't expect forgiveness. Adam's phone buzzes. He glances at it, and for a split second, his mask slips. Fear? Guilt? Before I can process it, he's heading for the door. I'll be back tomorrow, he says, not looking back. My lawyer will contact you about the arrangements. The door clicks shut behind him, and suddenly I can breathe again. Dr. Collins places a gentle hand on my shoulder. McKenna, I'm so sorry. Don't. I reach for my phone, my fingers already finding Sam's number. My cousin will know what to do. He always does. Just get me the paperwork for the test. And Dr. Collins, make sure it's witnessed, every step. He nods, understanding dawning in his eyes. Of course. I look at my daughter again, memorizing every perfect detail of her face. Whatever game Adam's playing, whatever lies he's telling himself, one thing is certain. He has no idea what he's started. Sam's apartment feels like a sanctuary after 3 days in the hospital. I sink into his weathered leather couch, cradling Emma while Tara bustles around the kitchen, making tea. The familiar scent of old books and coffee grounds helps steady my nerves, but my hands won't stop shaking. He's changed all the locks, I say, watching Sam pace. Change the security codes too. 12 years of marriage, and he locks me out like I'm some kind of criminal. Sam stops pacing, his journalist's notebook already full of scribbled notes. When exactly did things start changing with Adam? Think back carefully. The question hits like a punch to the gut. I close my eyes, trying to pinpoint the moment my marriage began to crack. Maybe 4 months ago. He started working late, missing doctor's appointments, said it was a big merger. The Preston Tech deal? Tara sets down a mug of chamomile tea, her expression troubled. That closed months ago. I look up sharply. How do you know that? Because my sister works in their PR department. Tara exchanges a look with Sam. The deal fell through in March. When Adam started coming home with expensive new suits. When the mysterious business trips began. When he stopped touching me altogether. Here's what doesn't add up, Sam says, tapping his pen against the notebook. Why wait until the baby was born to demand a DNA test? Why not do it during the pregnancy? Because he needed a scene, Tara says quietly. He needed witnesses. The realization hits me like ice water. He's building a case against me. Emma stirs in my arms, and I adjust her blanket automatically. Her tiny face is so peaceful, so trusting, just like I used to be. There's something else, Sam says, hesitating. I made some calls. Adam's been meeting with divorce attorneys since January. When I first told him I was pregnant, when he smiled and hugged me and said everything was perfect. That son of a, I catch myself, looking down at Emma. Why go through with the pregnancy if he was planning this all along? Because of the Harrison family trust, Tara says. Your father-in-law's will had specific conditions about heirs, didn't it? The pieces start falling into place. The trust only pays out if there are legitimate children. My voice sounds hollow, even to my own ears. He needed proof the baby wasn't his to invalidate the claim. Sam's phone buzzes. He glances at it, his expression darkening. Adam just posted on LinkedIn. He's accepted a new position at Grant Technologies. Grant, the name triggers something in my memory. Wait, isn't that the company that tried to buy out Harrison Industries last year? Sam finishes. The same one your father-in-law refused to sell to before he died. A knock at the door makes us all jump. Tara peers through the peephole, then quickly steps back. It's Adam. Don't open it, I whisper, clutching Emma closer. McKenna, Adam's voice carries through the door. I know you're in there. The DNA test is scheduled for tomorrow morning. My lawyer insists you be present. Sam moves toward the door, but I grab his arm. Wait, let him talk. You're making this harder than it needs to be, Adam continues, his tone shifting to something almost gentle. Just come home. We can work this out. I stand up slowly, careful not to wake Emma. Work what out, Adam? The lies? The secret meetings? Or how about the trust fund you're trying to steal? Silence. Then, I don't know what you think you know. I know enough. My voice doesn't shake anymore. I know about Grant Technologies. I know about the divorce lawyers. And soon, I'll know everything else too. Another pause. When he speaks again, all pretense of gentleness is gone. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Neither do you. I look down at our daughter, my daughter, and something hardens inside me. Game on, Adam. His footsteps retreat down the hallway. Sam locks the door, then turns to me. What's the plan? I pull out my phone, scrolling through old contacts until I find the one I need. First, we find out everything we can about Grant Technologies. And then, I press dial. We call in some favors. The phone rings twice before a familiar voice answers. Dr. Collins, I need your help with something. Dr. Collins slides the phone across his desk, his expression grim. These messages were automatically backed up to the cloud account you shared. I thought you should see them. My hands tremble as I pick up the device. The timestamp shows 3:47 a.m., 2 days before I went into labor. Everything's arranged, the message reads. Once the test results come back, she won't have any claim to the trust. Make sure you stick to the plan. The response is from Adam. She suspects nothing. Just keep your father focused on the merger. Evelyn Grant, Dr. Collins says quietly. Daughter of Marcus Grant. The name tastes bitter in my mouth. The man who tried to force my father-in-law to sell his company last year. Sam leans forward, his journalist instincts kicking in. The same Marcus Grant who mysteriously acquired 3 board seats after your father-in-law's death. I scroll through more messages, each one worse than the last. Plans, meetings, intimate details that make my stomach turn. They've been seeing each other since January, the same month I told him about the baby. The timing's not coincidental, Sam says. Grant Technologies announced their hostile takeover bid last week. With Adam's help, they'll have controlling interest in Harrison Industries. Unless there's a legitimate heir, the pieces click into place. That's why he needs the DNA test to show Emma isn't his. It's not about the baby at all. It's about the company. A knock interrupts us. Tara slips in, her face pale. Adam's here, with lawyers. My heart pounds. But I force myself to stay calm. Let them in. Adam enters like he owns the place, flanked by 2 suits, who probably cost more than my annual salary. He looks different, sharper, colder, wearing a tie I've never seen before. This is a private medical facility, Dr. Collins starts, but Adam cuts him off. Where we're conducting a paternity test that my client has every right to oversee. The older lawyer steps forward. We have concerns about potential tampering. I laugh. I can't help it. Tampering? That's rich, coming from you. Adam's jaw tightens. Careful, McKenna. You're already facing potential fraud charges. If what? I hold up the phone. If these messages somehow become public? The ones showing you and Evelyn planning to steal your father's company. He freezes. For just a second, I see real fear in his eyes. You had access to your private messages on our shared cloud account. I stand up, anger giving me strength. The one you forgot to disconnect when you were so busy planning your little corporate takeover. The younger lawyer whispers something in Adam's ear. His face darkens. This changes nothing, he says, but his voice wavers. The test will proceed exactly as planned. Dr. Collins interrupts. Under my supervision, with witnesses present. Unless you'd prefer to explain to the board why you're colluding with Grant Technologies while serving as Harrison Industries CFO? Adam's hand twitches toward his phone, but Sam steps forward. I wouldn't. My article about corporate espionage at Grant Technologies goes live in an hour. Fascinating stuff about insider trading and family betrayal. You're bluffing, Adam says, but sweat beads on his forehead. I move closer, keeping my voice low. You want a war, Adam? Fine. But remember, you taught me everything about corporate finance during those late-night strategy sessions. Everything. McKenna. And I learned something else from you too. I show him the last message he sent Evelyn, the one about love and forever. Always keep receipts. The lawyers exchange glances. The older one clears his throat. Perhaps we should discuss terms. No terms, I say, watching Adam's perfect facade crack. No deals. You wanted to play dirty? Let's play. But remember, you're not just fighting for money anymore. You're fighting for survival. They leave, Adam's shoulders rigid with fury. Sam whistles low. That was just the beginning. I finish, sitting back down, as my legs threaten to give out. Dr. Collins, how long until the test results? 24 hours. He studies me carefully. Are you sure about this? Once we start, I'm sure. I look at the photo on his desk. The one of him with my father-in-law at medical school graduation. He trusted the wrong people. I won't make the same mistake. Sam squeezes my shoulder. What's next? I pull out my own phone, scrolling to a number I never thought I'd use. Next, we talk to Evelyn Grant. It's time she learned what kind of man she's really dealing with. The Grant Technologies lobby gleams with wealth and power, all steel and glass, reaching toward the sky. I adjust Emma's carrier on my arm, feeling small, until I catch my reflection in the polished marble. I'm wearing one of Adam's favorite suits, the one he bought me for board meetings. It fits differently now, But the armor is what matters. Miss Grant is in a meeting. The receptionist says, not bothering to look up. Tell her McKenna Harrison is here. I keep my voice steady. With her fiancé's baby. The clicking of keys stops. Her head snaps up, eyes widening as she takes in Emma's dark curls. So like Adam's. 5 minutes later, I'm sitting across from Evelyn Grant in her corner office. She's younger than I expected, perfectly polished, in a way that speaks of old money and careful breeding. Her engagement ring catches the light. 3 carats, princess cut, just like the one in Adam's browser history. I don't understand, she says, but her hands betray her, twisting a pen until her knuckles go white. Adam never mentioned. A wife? A baby? I gentle Emma's fussing with practiced ease. Funny how those details slip his mind when he's planning corporate takeovers. Her face drains of color. You can't prove. I slide my phone across her desk, screenshots displayed. Actually, I can. The question is, what will your father say when he learns his perfect future son-in-law is still married? That he's using your relationship to manipulate Harrison Industries stock? You're lying. But she's already reading, her perfectly manicured finger scrolling through message after message. The DNA test is tomorrow. I continue, watching her face. Adam's quite confident about the results, almost like he knows something I don't. She looks up sharply. Something flickers in her eyes. Recognition. Fear. My phone buzzes. Sam's text makes my blood run cold. Lab break-in last night. Security footage wiped. He wouldn't. Evelyn whispers, more to herself than me. Daddy would never. Your father's company stands to gain millions if Harrison Industries falls. I lean forward. And Adam stands to gain everything, unless there's a legitimate heir. The pen in her hands snaps. Ink bleeds across her pristine desk calendar, staining wedding venue appointments and merger dates alike. Get out, her voice shakes. Before I call security, I stand slowly, gathering Emma close. You know what's funny? He bought me that exact same ring 5 years ago. Promised me the same forever. Even use the same pet names. I said, get out. Check his phone, I say softly. The one he keeps in his gym locker. The one with the real messages. She freezes. How did you? Because I was you once. Young, in love, certain he was different. I head for the door, then pause. Oh, and Evelyn. When you confront him, watch his left eyebrow. It twitches when he lies. The elevator doors close on her shattered expression. My hands shake as I text Sam. It's done. Start phase 2. His reply is immediate. Tara's contact at the lab confirmed tampering attempts. Dr. Collins is moving the test to a secure facility. Another message pops up from an unknown number. My heart stops when I open it. Clever girl, Adam writes. But you forgot who taught you how to play chess. Check your Harrison Industries email. You have 1 hour to resign from the board, or those creative accounting fixes you helped me with last year go public. Your move. I stare at the screen, remembering late nights poring over spreadsheets, trusting Adam's guidance, signing documents he swore were routine. My stomach churns as I realize just how long he's been planning this. Emma stirs, her tiny hand catching my finger. In her face, I see my father-in-law's strength, my own determination, and something else. Something Adam never understood about the Harrison legacy. I dial Dr. Collins. How quickly can you access the original audit files from last year? Already done, he replies. And McKenna, I found something interesting in your father-in-law's private records. Something about a contingency plan. For the first time in days, I smile. Tell me everything. The game isn't over, it's just beginning. The secure lab feels like a fortress. All sterile whites and security cameras tracking our every move. Dr. Collins stands at the testing station, his face unreadable as Adam's lawyers hover nearby. Emma sleeps in her carrier, oblivious to the tension crackling through the room. The results will be available in 30 minutes, Dr. Collins announces. All parties will remain present until The door bursts open. Evelyn Grant storms in, her perfect composure shattered, mascara streaking her cheeks. "You bastard!" Adam steps back, his confident mask slipping. "Evelyn, this isn't the gym locker." She hurls her phone at him. It crashes against the wall. "3 other women, and you're still married?" The lawyers exchange alarmed glances. One reaches for his briefcase, but Sam blocks his path. "Nobody leaves," he says quietly. "Not until we hear those results." Adam straightens his tie, a nervous tell I'd forgotten until now. "This is ridiculous. Whatever McKenna told you, she didn't have to tell me anything." Evelyn's voice breaks. "Your friend Marcus was quite helpful once I showed him the real numbers behind the Grant Technologies merger." The color drains from Adam's face. "You didn't. Daddy's on his way." She smiles, bitter and sharp. "With the SEC." My phone vibrates. A message from Tara. "Security footage recovered. Lab break-in suspect identified." I slide the phone to Dr. Collins. He studies the image, then looks at Adam's younger lawyer. The man starts sweating. "Interesting," Dr. Collins says. "Very interesting indeed." Adam's eyes dart between us, calculating. I recognize that look, the one he gets when he's about to sacrifice a piece to save his game. "The accounting irregularities," he says suddenly. "McKenna signed off on all of them. She's just as culpable." "Except for the contingency plan," I interrupt, watching his face. "The one my father-in-law left with Dr. Collins before he died." Adam freezes. "What?" He knew Adam. About the embezzlement, about Grant Technologies. He documented everything. My voice doesn't shake anymore. "Including your attempts to access Emma's trust fund before she was even born." The older lawyer clears his throat. "Mr. Harrison, perhaps we should—" "Shut up." Adam's composure cracks completely. He rounds on me, fists clenched. "You're bluffing. Richard never—" "Your father trusted me," Dr. Collins says quietly. "Not just as his doctor, but as executor of his estate, including the real will." The machine beeps. Test results ready. Adam lunges for the printout, but Sam intercepts him. "It's over," Sam says. "The SEC has everything. The fake DNA test orders, the embezzlement records, even your deals with Marcus." Footsteps echo in the hallway. Heavy, purposeful. Adam backs away from the door. "McKenna," he tries, voice softening to that familiar, manipulative tone. "We can still fix this, for Emma's sake. Don't you dare." The words burn like acid. "Don't you dare use our daughter as a bargaining chip." The door opens. Marcus Grant enters first, followed by 2 SEC agents. Behind them, Tara holds up her phone, recording everything. "Adam Harrison," one agent begins. "You're under investigation for securities fraud." What happens next seems to unfold in slow motion. Adam bolts toward the emergency exit. The younger lawyer moves to block Sam. Evelyn screams something about betrayal. And through it all, Emma sleeps peacefully, unaware that her world is shifting on its axis. Dr. Collins touches my arm, holding out the test results. "Do you want to know?" I stare at the paper, remembering all the nights I wondered if Adam's accusations held any truth. If I'd somehow failed as a wife, as a mother. "No," I say finally, watching the SEC agents handcuff my husband. "The results don't matter anymore. She's my daughter. That's all I need to know." Marcus Grant approaches, his face grave. "Mrs. Harrison, we'll need your testimony." "Tomorrow," I cut in, gathering Emma close. "Right now, I'm taking my daughter home." As we leave, I hear Adam calling my name. Desperate now, finally understanding what he's lost. I don't look back. Some games aren't worth winning. Some victories come not from revenge, but from walking away. Tomorrow will bring lawyers and testimonies and battles for control of Harrison Industries. But tonight, I have everything I need in my arms. The Harrison Industries boardroom feels colder than I remember. Maybe it's the empty chairs. Half the board resigned after the SEC investigation went public. Maybe it's the way Dr. Collins keeps checking his watch, or how Sam won't meet my eyes. The evidence is conclusive, Marcus Grant says, spreading documents across the polished table. The DNA test results were altered before they reached the lab. However, Adam's new lawyer interrupts. My client maintains that Mrs. Harrison was complicit in the financial irregularities. The signature on these documents were forged, I say, but my voice sounds hollow even to me. Can you prove it? The lawyer slides more papers forward. Because these trading records show otherwise. Your personal account received substantial transfers during the period in question. My hands shake as I recognize the account numbers. Our joint account, the one Adam insisted I stop monitoring because he had it handled. Sam stands abruptly. This is ridiculous. McKenna was on maternity leave when she authorized these transactions. The lawyer's smile is shark-like. The timestamps say otherwise. Dr. Collins clears his throat. The contingency plan has been compromised. Marcus Grant's words fall like stones. Someone accessed Richard Harrison's private files last night. Everything's gone. The room spins. I grip the table edge, feeling the ground shift beneath me. That's impossible. The security protocols were bypassed using your credentials. The lawyer looks almost sympathetic, along with some very interesting emails about offshore accounts. My phone buzzes. Tara sending emergency updates. The company stock is in free fall. News outlets are running stories about fraud at all levels of Harrison Industries. Social media is exploding with speculation about the DNA test scandal. I can explain, I start, but Adam's lawyer holds up his hand. Save it for the SEC hearing. He stands, straightening his papers. In the meantime, the board has called for an emergency vote of no confidence. Given the circumstances, you can't. The words scrape my throat. This company was my father-in-law's life work. He trusted me to... Trust? Adam's voice makes me flinch. He stands in the doorway, immaculate, despite his house arrest ankle monitor. Like I trusted you not to go behind my back to Evelyn. Don't you dare. The board needs stability, he continues smoothly. Someone with clean hands to weather this storm. Fortunately, my agreement with the SEC includes full cooperation in exchange for a reduced sentence. The pieces click into place, the compromised files, the forged signatures, the carefully constructed paper trail leading straight to me. You're going to pin everything on me. The realization tastes like ash. The fraud, the cover-up, all of it. His left eyebrow twitches. The tell I warned Evelyn about. You did this to yourself, McKenna. If you'd just played along? I stand so quickly my chair topples. While you stole my daughter's inheritance. While you destroyed everything Richard built? Your daughter. His smile turns cruel. About that. The original DNA test results were quite interesting. The room goes silent. Sam moves toward Adam, but security guards step between them. You're lying, I whisper. But doubt creeps in like poison. All those late nights at the office, the mysterious business trips, the way he never wanted to discuss baby names or nursery colors. Am I? He pulls out his phone, showing a lab report I've never seen. Want to explain these genetic markers? Dr. Collins starts to speak, but Adam's lawyer cuts him off. My client is prepared to file for full custody, given the circumstances. The court tends to frown on fraud and embezzlement when determining fitness for parenthood. The world narrows to a pinpoint. I see Emma's face, her tiny fingers, her dark curls. I hear her midnight cries and morning giggles. I feel the weight of her in my arms. The only thing that's felt real since this nightmare began. The board votes in an hour, Adam says softly. Resign now, sign over your shares, and maybe we can arrange supervised visitation. Sam grabs my arm as I sway. McKenna, don't, but I'm already reaching for the resignation letter, my vision blurring. Sometimes surrender isn't about giving up. Sometimes it's about buying time to find another way to fight. Dr. Collins' office feels different at midnight. Shadows creep across his father's medical degrees, and the steady hum of backup generators masks our footsteps. Sam keeps watch at the door while Tara works her magic on the computer. "Found it," she whispers. "The original server backup. Adam's people missed it during the purge." My hands shake as I insert the flash drive Richard Harrison gave me years ago. His insurance policy that I never thought I'd need. "How long?" 10 minutes to decrypt. Tara's fingers fly across the keyboard. "If your father-in-law's passwords still work?" The door crashes open. Adam stands there, flanked by 2 security guards. His ankle monitor blinks accusingly in the darkness. "I knew you'd try something desperate." He steps inside, straightening his cuffs. "But breaking and entering, that's going to look terrible in the custody hearing." Sam moves between us. "How did you find you?" Adam's smile doesn't reach his eyes. "Dr. Collins isn't as loyal as you thought. Everyone has a price." "Like Evelyn's price?" The words taste bitter. Or was she just another stepping stone? His composure cracks just for a second. "You don't understand what's at stake." 7 minutes. Tara murmurs behind me. Adam's eyes narrow. "Whatever you're trying to recover, it won't matter. The board votes tomorrow morning. Your resignation is already processed." "Funny thing about resignations," I say, watching the progress bar crawl. "They're not valid if signed under duress, or if the person demanding them is committing fraud." He laughs, but there's an edge of uncertainty. "You can't prove anything." 5 minutes. Tara says. Adam signals the guards. "Shut it down, now." "Wait." I step forward, playing my last card. "The real DNA results. Show them to me. We've been through this. Show me, or I forward everything we find to the SEC. Every email, every transaction, every meeting with Marcus Grant." His left eyebrow twitches. "You're bluffing." 3 minutes, Tara announces. The guards move toward the computer. Sam tenses, ready to intervene. "She's yours." Adam's words freeze everyone in place. "The DNA test, the real one, it proves she's yours. I altered the results because I needed leverage. The admission should hurt, but all I feel is clarity. You never wanted her anyway, did you? She was just another asset to control." 2 minutes. Adam's facade finally cracks. "You think this is about a baby. This is about power, control. Everything Richard promised me when he made me CFO. He promised you a legacy," I say quietly. "Not a kingdom to steal." 1 minute. Adam lunges for the computer. Sam intercepts him as Tara shields the screen. In the chaos, something falls from Adam's pocket. A phone I've never seen before. I grab it, finding the messages instantly. Conversations with Marcus Grant. Plans to strip Harrison Industries for parts. And something else. Emails from Dr. Collins. "It's done," Tara says triumphantly. "Everything's decrypted." Adam goes still. "You don't want to open that file." "But I already am." Richard Harrison's voice fills the room. A video confession recorded days before his death. He names names, details, schemes, and reveals one final twist. "The company was never yours to steal," I tell Adam, understanding, at last. "Richard changed his will before he died. He left controlling interest to Emma." "Impossible," but Adam's voice shakes. "She wasn't even born?" I show him the date on the will. "He knew, Adam, about everything. The affairs, the fraud, the deals with Grant Technologies. This whole time, you've been playing exactly the game he expected." Police sirens wail in the distance. Adam's face contorts with fury. "You think you've won? I still have the board, the evidence, your signed confession." "Check your phone," Sam says quietly. "The real one you just dropped." Adam's eyes widen as messages flood in. The SEC reopening their investigation. Marcus Grant cutting deals to save himself. Evelyn's father withdrawing all support. And Dr. Collins sending one final message. I kept my promise, Richard. Your granddaughter's legacy is safe. The police burst in as Adam crumples, his empire of lies collapsing around him. But I'm already walking away, thinking of Emma sleeping peacefully at home. Some victories aren't about winning. They're about protecting what matters most. The Harrison Industries boardroom still holds echoes of last night's chaos. Police tape crosses the doorway, and evidence markers dot the conference table, where Adam's empire finally crumbled. Dr. Collins hands me a leather portfolio, Richard Harrison's personal files. He wanted you to have these, he says quietly. When the time was right, inside, beneath years of financial records and corporate strategies, I find a letter. The paper is aged, the ink faded, but Richard's decisive handwriting remains clear. My dear McKenna, by now you'll understand why I chose you to protect Emma's inheritance. Not because you're Adam's wife, but because you see what he never could. That legacy isn't measured in stock prices or merger deals. It's built in moments of choice, in decisions to protect rather than destroy. Emma fusses in her carrier. I adjust her blanket, catching a glimpse of my reflection in the darkened windows. I look different somehow. Stronger, maybe, or just more certain. Sam appears in the doorway. The SEC wants to review the video testimony again, and Evelyn Grant is here. I expect anger when Evelyn enters, but her eyes hold only exhaustion. The board approved the dissolution of the merger attempt, she says. Daddy's stepping down. The scandal. She trails off, twisting her now ringless fingers. I never wanted this, I tell her. It's true, mostly. Neither did I. She looks at Emma, something softening in her face. You know, he promised me children too. A future. I actually believed. I know, because I did too, once. Dr. Collins clears his throat. The new board members are waiting. They'll need direction regarding the company's future. I think of Richard's letter, of choices and legacies. Tell them we're restructuring, starting with the charity foundation, doubling the funding for single-parent support programs. Tara smiles from her spot by the computer, already drafting the press release. A commotion outside draws our attention. Through the glass walls, I see Adam being escorted out by federal agents, his perfect suit wrinkled, his mask of confidence finally shattered. He catches my eye, starts to speak. I turn away. Some conversations aren't worth having. There's something else, Dr. Collins says, producing another envelope. Your father-in-law left specific instructions about Emma's trust. It's not just money, it's a challenge grant. Every dollar has to be matched by community investment projects. I laugh, understanding at last. He made sure the legacy couldn't be stolen. It has to be earned. Speaking of earning, Sam interjects, the investigative piece just went live. Corporate corruption and the price of truth. Though personally, I think karma in the boardroom had a better ring to it. No more karma, I decide, watching Emma drift to sleep. No more revenge either, just forward motion. Dr. Collins raises an eyebrow. And Adam? Will face justice through proper channels. I close Richard's portfolio. I'm done playing his games. Evelyn stands to leave, pausing at the door. For what it's worth, I think Richard chose well, not just for the company, but for her. She nods toward Emma. After she's gone, I walk to Richard's old office. His nameplate still hangs on the door, though soon it will read Harrison Industries, Trust Management. Inside, his presence lingers in every carefully chosen detail. I find one last note, tucked into his desk calendar, dated the day he died. Remember, power isn't in knowing when to fight, it's in knowing when to stop. Emma wakes, demanding attention with her father's determination, but, thankfully, none of his calculation. I lift her, breathing in that perfect baby scent. Ready to go home? Sam asks from the doorway. Not home, I correct him, gathering our things. Forward. Outside, reporters wait with questions about scandal and redemption. Tomorrow will bring lawyers and restructuring plans and 1,000 decisions about Emma's future. But right now, in this moment of quiet victory, I understand what Richard knew all along. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't in destroying what others built, but in building something better from the ashes they left behind.
I'm remarrying a 23-year-old wealthy man's daughter. Get the hell out of here. You on welfare. Just 3 days after we separated, I met Greg. Next to him stood a young, beautiful woman. She entwined her arm with Greg's and seemed wary of me. However, I recognized her. Have we met somewhere before? Or am I mistaken? While Greg hurled harsh words at me, I desperately tried to recall who this woman was. Then it hit me. Could it be? I remembered how I first came to know this woman and her true identity. At the same time, I couldn't help but burst into laughter. Hey, what are you laughing at? It's creepy. Sorry, it's just because this woman is that person. My name is Ashley Morris. I'm 32 and single. I've been working as a nursery school teacher, which has been my dream since I was a student. There are tough aspects like pressure from my boss and dealing with parents, but I'm healed every day by the children's smiles as I work hard. Above all, I've always admired nursery school teachers. I can't quit easily. My workplace might change, but I plan to continue as a nursery teacher until retirement. That's what I thought. However, life doesn't always go as planned. One day, at a mixer invited by a friend, I met a man 3 years my senior, Greg. He seems to be an executive at a well-known company around here. He achieved good results and became an executive in his 20s. I guess that's what they call an elite. However, far from bragging about his career, he was a very humble man. Wow, an executive in your 20s? That's amazing. Not really. There were quite a few others besides me. Still, it's impressive to the outside world. Greg and I happened to sit next to each other, and we hit it off as if we weren't strangers. We exchanged contact information and started meeting. After a few dates, our relationship developed. After 3 years of dating, we got married. Greg was very kind to me even while we were dating. He would plan our dates and give me wonderful gifts, not only on special days. Thank you, Greg. I just want to see Ashley happy. He would come up with such cheesy lines, and I was thrilled. I felt fortunate to have met such a wonderful person. However, at that time, I didn't yet know Greg's true nature. After getting married, my life changed dramatically. It began when Greg told me to quit being a nursery school teacher. Why? I intended to continue working even after getting married. Greg had agreed to that. Please. My mom also said it would be better that way. Your mother has nothing to do with our lives, right? She does, doesn't she? Mom said she would support our lives. Why do you want to work so much? You can live on my income alone. I'm not denying that. Indeed, we could live on Greg's income alone, but I was reluctant to quit being a nursery school teacher. After discussing it, I relented. In fact, we had discussed wanting children in the future, and we concluded that it would be more reassuring to have me at home to start a family. It seems that my mother-in-law had suggested the same, and I reluctantly decided to quit my job. After quitting, at Greg's request, we moved close to his parents' home. According to Greg, it would be easier to receive support if our houses were close. It's at least better than living together. That's what I thought. and I accepted the move. I regretted not discussing our married life while we were dating, but that's a secret. If my mother-in-law had a good personality, I would have gladly accepted it. However, her character was far from good. She looked down on me and scrutinized me with judging eyes. I just couldn't accept that. But once Greg and I started living together, I hoped the chances of meeting my mother-in-law would decrease. That was a big misunderstanding. In fact, since we moved close by, my mother-in-law started coming to our house daily. My father-in-law had already passed away, and perhaps she disliked being alone at home. "Excuse me, Ashley. What is this frozen food packaging doing here?" Every time she visited, my mother-in-law would thoroughly check every corner of the house, even peeking into the trash can. "Hey, not there too. You're not letting my son eat lunches filled with frozen food, are you?" "I do use some frozen food, but not for everything. As a housewife, shouldn't you be making every lunch from scratch? Are you planning to feed our future children frozen food too?" Ah, I can't believe I have such an unimaginable daughter-in-law. I'm sorry. Should a housewife not use frozen food? Certainly, I had chosen the path of a full-time housewife. However, it wasn't something I had desired myself. After my mother-in-law had her say and left our house satisfied. Sigh. All I could do was sigh. Day after day, my mother-in-law would come to the house, complain, and leave. There were even times when she came while I was out and told me off. "Where are you? I came all this way, so hurry up and let me in the houses." She seemed to enjoy tormenting me and used it as a way to relieve her stress. Although I had refused before, getting told off every time was exhausting. Eventually, I became cautious even when going to the nearby convenience store. However, my mother-in-law continuously repeated one particular phrase. "When will you have children?" She pressured me every time we met. "We still can't have them." "What? Are you kidding me? You're infertile, aren't you?" Such tactless remarks were typical of her. As far as my mother-in-law was concerned, the inability to have children was all my fault. Greg was definitely not to blame. However, Greg himself was kind to me. He seemed to think that pregnancy was something we should work on as a couple, and he often cared about my health. "Don't rush with the kids. Sure, I want to give mom a grandchild, but you're more important to me. Right?" "Right. Thank you." I thought that if we worked together as a couple, we would eventually be blessed with children. However, my hopes never reached fruition. 2 years later, we still hadn't had any children. At that time, my mother-in-law seemed to have given up on having grandchildren and stopped visiting our houses. At the same time, Greg's attitude towards me worsened, and he began to verbally abuse me casually. Perhaps it was the stress of not being able to have children, or maybe he just grew to dislike me. The more I thought about it, the darker my thoughts became. But Greg didn't seem to care about how I felt. "Hey, the food. Why isn't it ready yet?" "Ah, sorry. It'll be ready soon." Ugh, really useless. Can't even cook, can't clean, can't get pregnant. Mom was disgusted. "Why did I even marry someone like you?" Sorry. I no longer had the energy to fight back, and I just kept apologizing to Greg. Seeing me like this, Greg became even more abusive. He would complain about the food being bad, the cleaning not being thorough. I could even get yelled at for a single strand of hair being out of place. And after hurling abuse at me, he would always say, "That's why you can't get pregnant." I was careful about my diet and health management. I took my temperature, managed my menstrual cycle, and was more cautious than when we first got married. But still, I didn't become pregnant. Initially, it was Greg who refused. I understood he was busy or tired from work. But if he was going to complain about not having children, shouldn't he be cooperating? If you're going to say that, then help out. This isn't something I can handle alone. Ugh, shut up. Haven't I told you I'm tired? No matter how I tried to reason with him, Greg would only say he was tired and showed no signs of willingness to cooperate. If Greg wasn't going to help, there was nothing I could do. Whenever I had a moment to myself, I would wonder how things had come to this. Was this the married life I had envisioned? I vaguely thought that our relationship, which had completely cooled, might never return to how it was before. 6 months later, our relationship had cooled even further. Eventually, Greg stopped coming home altogether. He claimed it was due to sudden overtime or drinking parties. He said he had work on holidays too, so he spent very little time at home. I figured he must have given up on me and was probably cheating. If only he would just say he wanted a divorce. In the end, I had no choice but to live a lonely life at home by myself. Greg occasionally came home, but he continued to spew verbal abuse at me. "Why do you always look so miserable? It's disgusting. Sorry." Where had the Greg I married gone? The Greg from those days wasn't someone who would call people disgusting. All I could do was apologize, trying not to upset him further. However, one day, after finishing shopping for dinner and returning home, Greg was there unusually. "Oh, what's up?" "Ah, Ashley. Finally back, huh?" Greg spoke cheerfully. What was he planning? I braced myself and waited for his words when he suddenly handed me a piece of paper. It was a divorce paper. Huh, a divorce. "Yeah, I don't need you anymore. There's no point in us being married. Go ahead, become homeless, or get on welfare." So, that's how it is. Alongside the sadness of being clearly told I was no longer needed, I felt a sense of relief that I could finally escape this life. I understand. I accepted the divorce without hesitation. Perhaps because I accepted it so quickly, Greg seemed slightly surprised. I signed the divorce papers and handed them to Greg. At that moment, I felt like I was released from everything and let out a big sigh. Greg told me to get out by the next day, so I went back to my room and packed the essentials. The next day, while Greg was at work, I left the houses and headed to my parents' houses. I had contacted my parents, but they seemed worried now that I was actually coming home. "You can stay at home as long as you need. There's no rush." Encouraged by my mother's words, I decided to face tomorrow with renewed effort. 3 days after the divorce, my heart was still healing, but I knew I had to move forward. I needed to find a job, so I looked through magazines and online for job listings. Perhaps due to labor shortages, there were many openings for nursery school teachers. Maybe I should become a nursery teacher again. I saved a few listings that caught my interest. Looking at the clock, it was past 4 p.m. I had been looking at listings for an hour. I decided to go outside for a change of pace. I didn't have any particular errand, I just wanted to take a walk. I reminisced about walking this path to school or working as a part-timer at this grocery store. However, just as I was about to head home after wandering around for about 30 minutes, I saw a familiar figure. Greg? What? Ashley. In front of me stood Greg, and next to him was an unfamiliar woman, much younger and more beautiful than either Greg or me. The woman intertwined her arm with Greg's and looked at me warily. Why are you here? That's my line. Why are you here? Shut up. It's none of your business. Greg did not want to answer my question. Hey, Greg, who is this woman? Oh, she's my ex-wife. Don't worry about her, Vanessa. Ex-wife? The woman, referred to as Vanessa, was acting flirtatiously, though it only made her seem more like a bimbo. Yet, I felt another emotion upon seeing Vanessa. She seemed familiar. Had we ever met before? Who is she? My current wife. Mom introduced us. What? Wife? That's right. Just 3 days after our divorce, and he's already remarried. My mind went blank. To add insult to injury, Vanessa revealed a shocking fact. We're going to have a baby in a few months. A baby? Considering the size of Vanessa's belly, she seemed to have been pregnant for more than half a year. That time frame overlaps with when Greg stopped coming home. Had they been connected since then? Anyway, Greg looked at Vanessa's face and once again forced reality upon me. I'm remarrying a 23-year-old wealthy man's daughter. Get the hell out of here, you on welfare. Greg said this and burst into a dirty laugh, which Vanessa joined with a high-pitched giggle. That's not. I'm not on welfare. Shut up. Stop pretending. Then Greg and Vanessa burst into laughter again. I felt miserable and was about to cry. However, as I glanced at Vanessa's face, I realized something. The déjà vu I had been feeling since earlier, and the fact that Vanessa was a wealthy man's daughter. Everything connected. At the same time, my tears receded and laughter welled up inside me. Ha ha. My sudden laughter made them step back a bit. Why is she laughing? Gross. Can't handle this. Shall we go? Disgusted by me, the two of them quickly left the scene. The reason I laughed at Vanessa was that I knew her real identity. Indeed, Vanessa is a wealthy man's daughter. However, it's not a successful wealth. In fact, her parents' company, which they managed, was on the brink of bankruptcy. A little while ago, when I was reading job sites and magazines, Vanessa was introduced as a wealthy man's daughter with a photo. It's rare for a wealthy family to introduce their daughter like that, which is why it stuck in my memory. When I later researched the company owned by the wealthy family, various bulletin boards and review sites mentioned it was close to bankruptcy, and indeed, it seemed to be in quite precarious management. Bankruptcy seemed imminent. It was that much of a troubled company. Maybe this could work. Seeing Greg happy, and the fact that his mother introduced Vanessa, watching all this, Something inside me crumbled. I was determined to teach them a lesson with my own hands. They might be happy now, but I'll definitely plunge them into the depths of misery. The first thing I did to bring them down was to offer them a direct apology. A few days after meeting Greg again, I contacted Greg, apologized for laughing, and expressed my desire to give them a baby shower gift. Initially cautious, Greg accepted my request once he saw I was remorseful. However, this was merely a part of my strategy. I wanted to claim damages from Greg and Vanessa through a lawyer, but I had no solid evidence. So, pretending to be remorseful, I called them out to let them spill everything about how they met and the baby, recording everything to submit to the lawyer. A week later, I was at a cafe near my parents' home. Greg and Vanessa arrived about 10 minutes past our meeting time. Sorry. They sat down in front of me without any remorse, still arm in arm, flaunting their affection. Sorry for calling you out suddenly. I was thinking about how rude I was last time we met. I wanted to apologize. Also, isn't your child due soon? I was wondering if I could give you a baby shower gift. Really? Wow, you're so thoughtful. Greg and Vanessa were elated, unaware of everything. By the way, you met through your mother, right? I'd love to hear more about it. As I said this, I discreetly started recording with my smartphone. You want to know? Can't help it then? Greg began talking eagerly, with Vanessa looking at him adoringly. To anyone else, it might seem like a sweet couple's story, but it was far from that. That time was really tough, huh? Yeah, but I'm happy to be with Greg now. Vanessa clung to Greg, who relaxed his expression. Honestly, it was nauseating seeing Greg dote on a younger woman. The two of them fell right into my trap, telling each other how much they loved one another. Of course, I was recording everything. This should definitely serve as solid evidence. Isn't it great to remarry someone younger? Of course, I'm truly happy every day. Right, Vanessa? Yeah, so happy. Their lovey-dovey talk lasted over an hour. It was hard to keep smiling and nodding, but the more comfortably they talked, the more advantageous it was for me. 3 hours later, we all went our separate ways. I went home and replayed the recordings. Everything was recorded clearly. I then contacted the law firm I had in mind. After a day's activities, I flopped onto my bed. Greg and Vanessa's happy faces wouldn't leave my mind. It seemed he was happier with her than when he was with me. When did he start to dislike me? Sigh. Before our marriage, I only saw the good sides of Greg, and now I was painfully aware of it. 2 weeks later, I called them to a nearby station, saying I wanted them to see the actual baby gift. They arrived about 10 minutes late, arm in arm as usual. Putting so much effort into seeing the actual gift, huh? You seemed so sad before, but you're actually celebrating for us. Yeah, so happy. Happy indeed. They were as close as ever, but their happiness would only last until this moment. Shall we go? I led them to a taxi. Our destination was the law office. Unaware of anything, they continued to flirt in the taxi, impressively unconcerned about public eyes. A few minutes later, the taxi arrived at the law office. The blissfully unaware couple followed me without any suspicion. but Greg realized something was amiss as we entered. "Hey, what's this place?" he shouted, but it was too late. Guided by the receptionist, they were led into a conference room. "Were you tricking us?" "What do you mean?" The two of them were yelling loudly, but the lawyer present calmed them down. "Did you really think I was going to give you a baby shower gift? Thanks for coming all this way." "What?" As the two flustered people sat down, the lawyer explained what was happening and why I had taken such actions. "Really, you're the worst. What's with this person? We're already divorced, right? We don't have anything to do with compensation. I am going to sue you for the abuses of me, especially under your cheating. You can still claim such compensation after a divorce, you know? All the lovey-dovey talk you happily shared at the cafe has been recorded and submitted, and the fact of your affair hasn't changed." "You." Greg sighed deeply and leaned back in his chair, but he sat up quickly when the lawyer mentioned the amount of compensation being demanded. $15,000? That's impossible. I can't pay that either. What? Can't pay? Why don't you ask her parents? Vanessa made a displeased face at my words. I pressed further, knowing her situation. "Oh, but that might be difficult. Her parents' company is about to go bankrupt, isn't it? So no funds, huh?" "Bankrupt? What do you mean?" "The company was doing well." Greg, who hadn't been informed, widened his eyes and looked at Vanessa, realizing she couldn't escape the truth any longer. Vanessa suddenly changed her demeanor and began to talk. "Ah, so it's all come out. Then no need to hide it. Yes, my parents' company is on the brink of bankruptcy. Ever since I met this old man, the business has been failing. So I thought I'd milk him for all he's worth and then leave. I never expected to get pregnant." "You calling me an old man? What? You just realized? I never wanted to marry someone like you in the first place. But since I got pregnant, I had no choice. Really, you're the worst. I can't do this anymore. I want a divorce as soon as possible." With that, Vanessa burst into high laughter. She seemed like a completely different person. Naturally, Greg was shocked by Vanessa's demeanor. "So you've been thinking that about me. I'm tired of acting. Now that it's come to this, I'm leaving you. I can't stand living with an old man like you." Vanessa, the couple, who had seemed so happy up until a moment ago, broke down so easily. While I hadn't known exactly how Vanessa felt about Greg, since I orchestrated this meeting, I was satisfied with the outcome. Eventually, Greg agreed to pay the compensation in a lump sum. I worried Greg might try to escape his obligations as his payment was delayed. However, a month later, that worry was resolved when Greg called me. As soon as I answered, he pleaded, "Help me." It turned out that his affair had been discovered at his company, making it difficult for him to stay, and he chose to resign. He had spent most of his savings on Vanessa, and now, broke and divorced, he had no one to turn to. "Hey, can we get back together? I don't have money for the compensation. Vanessa left me for another man, and I heard her company went bankrupt. I don't know what to do." Despite his almost tearful call, I had no intention of getting back together. "Get back together? Don't make me laugh. Your problems with that woman running away or not having money are none of my concern. If you hadn't done anything strange, none of this would have happened. Just take responsibility. After I sharply responded, Greg hung up without another word. The next day, whether he borrowed money or not, the full amount I demanded was transferred into my account. I didn't hear from Greg again after that. I'm now living at home and have started working as a nursery school teacher again. Indeed, the smiles of the children are bright. The work environment is better than before, and I enjoy my job every day. Getting divorced from Greg was the right decision. I have no plans to marry again anytime soon. Just like I thought years ago, I hope to continue being a nursery teacher until retirement, taking care of my health and living well.
My name is Rebecca Brown. I've been married for 4 years, but we don't have children. If we can't have children, it's fine as long as we live happily as a couple. And if I have a lifelong, trustworthy best friend, I think that's enough for happiness. One day, my best friend Mary came to our house and said she was pregnant. What? Mary, you're single, right? Are you planning to have the baby alone? I don't plan to have it alone. Looking at my husband, he seemed not so much surprised as he was laughing like he knew everything already. I thought, did he know about this? Not planning to have it alone means you're getting married, right? Oh, so you're finally getting married. Congratulations. That's wonderful. At that moment, I was genuinely happy. Raising a child alone is hard, so getting married seemed like the best option. So, who was the lucky guy? President candidate. Wow, really? Good for you. You always said you wanted to marry a rich man. So you finally caught one? Yes. So, the fortune is mine. The future is secure. Saying this, she smiled challengingly. And then, she made eye contact with my husband Steve. Seeing this, I couldn't help but think, wait. Is this? No, it can't be. Probably my face showed my disbelief, because Mary said mockingly. Yes, the guy is your husband, Steve. What? I turned to my husband in shock, and there he was, making a mocking face too. I prioritized having children. I want a divorce. A dream. I pinched my cheek, but there was no waking up from this reality, and the pain told me it was all true. What do you mean? It's pretty clear. Staying with you, there's no chance of having kids. No kids means no successor. Basically, you're useless. If you divorce me, you'll be in trouble, you know? No trouble at all. I'm guaranteed to be the next president. Indeed, my husband is a candidate for president. But that's just it, a candidate. If he divorces me, he would likely be removed from contention. However, it seems he hasn't considered that at all. That company is already mine. When I become president, I'll kick your father out of the company. I'm sick of him holding me back. Then, the child we'll have will be the successor. With that, the company's future and ours are secure, all thanks to Mary. Are you serious? Of course. I've been waiting for this chance. Even though you're not president yet? I will be soon, so there's nothing to worry about. With that, my husband sat back smugly, and Mary smiled satisfactorily next to him. To think I believed you were my best friend, and you'd steal my husband. Until now, you were the rich girl, and I was the poor one. I endured this unfairness. Whenever we went shopping, I could only afford cheap stuff, while you shopped at expensive stores. Do you know how frustrating that was? I can't wait for your father to be kicked out of the company so our roles can reverse. I'll shop at luxury stores, and you'll only afford discounted goods. How exhilarating that will be. You're lying. You stole someone's husband just for that? You wouldn't understand my frustration, so you say that. But it's really lucky you're infertile. Me, infertile? Since you can't have kids, that means you're infertile. That's right. You're infertile, so there's nothing you can do. It's not my fault I strayed, you couldn't have kids. As a president candidate, it's also my duty to have a successor, after all. So what happens if we divorce? Nothing much. Even if you are the president's daughter, it will soon mean nothing. So, you really think that? Yes, I do. You're worthless. Value. Well, fine. If that's how it is, let's get a divorce. I never dreamed my best friend would take you. But if that's your relationship, it's better you two marry for the sake of the child. I felt a great fatigue and was resigned to whatever came next. I had no intention of chasing after a cheater. But there was one thing I wanted to know. I'll agree to the divorce, but how long has this been going on? Oh. It started about 3 years after you got married. So, a year ago. Yes. He consulted with me. We can't have children. We've been married 2 years with no kids, tried treatments, but nothing worked. Without a child, there would be no successor. Indeed, no children then. That's when I suggested he should take a lover. A best friend suggests that? I never once thought of you as a friend. No. That's true. You're the only one who thought we were friends. That's why I made that suggestion to him. And Steve accepted your suggestion. Yes. Indeed, if the lover has a child, that child can be the successor. But why Mary as the mistress? That's simple. A man and a woman are together, and things just happen. So it's not because you two are in love? It's a match of interests. Love will eventually fade away, but mutual interests won't. So, I'll have Mary bear my child, and that child will be my successor. Then, I can be both the father of the successor and the president. In my old age, I can pass the president role to my child, and we will be secure. Calculating. Whether it's calculating or not, as long as we're happy, that's all that matters. Is that truly happiness? Happiness is different for everyone. You're just accepting it, aren't you? Your marriage to me was similar. Our marriage? Yeah, you might have felt love for me, but I never loved you. The only thing I loved was your background. A big company president as a father. Without that, marrying you would have been unthinkable. So that's why you were cooperative with the fertility treatments? Yes, exactly. We needed to find out where the problem was. If it turned out I was the issue, then there would be no hope for a successor. If I couldn't have children with a mistress either, then I'd have to think of another strategy. So, I definitely wanted to clear that up. But, in the end, it turned out I'm not to blame at all, so I could confidently go ahead and have a mistress. I see, that's how it is. Now you understand, right? I don't love you. Now that things are clear, please sign the divorce papers. Fine. Being married to someone who doesn't love me is unthinkable. And, I'll take this house. This house? Yes, this house. There's no mortgage, and it doesn't cost me anything to keep it. There's no reason not to take it. Fine by me. I don't care. Great, I'll live here happily with the child and the 3 of us. By the way, is the baby a boy? It's not certain yet, but it's probably a boy. What if it's a girl? If it's a girl, then we'll just have to have a second one. Then, I'll marry her off to a corporate heir. A marriage of convenience. Yes, I won't let the children do as they please. They will marry someone who can benefit our company. After all, if we're raising them, they should at least bring us some benefits. Disgusting. That's how the rich are. What an image you have. In this day and age, no one wants parents like that. Say whatever you want. It's not about trends. We have to keep having children and raise them to be useful for the company. That way, the parents make a fortune. That's abuse. It's for the children's happiness. So, leave all the furniture here when you go. I don't understand your so, but okay. It would be a hassle to take the furniture from here. I don't plan on taking anything except what's mine. You talk strangely. Oh, right. Because you bought them with Steve, they're not yours. I can't understand the mindset of the rich. Right, Steve? Yeah. Sorry to ruin your good mood, but... I said that and handed the divorce papers to my husband, then stood up. I went to the bedroom and brought back an envelope. When we had fertility treatments, I didn't tell you the results. You are sterile. Huh, sterile? You thought I was infertile, but it's you who's infertile. No way, you never said anything. If I had told you, you would have been overjoyed to cheat, right? If it wasn't going to happen anyway, you thought anything was okay. But even if I didn't say it, the result would have been the same. That's ridiculous. How could that be? The evidence is right here. He pointed at Mary's stomach, but Mary's face had turned pale. Huh, so this child is. If it turns out the mistress's lover's child, father wouldn't acknowledge it. That's crazy. And I'm passing on the debt to you. Debt? What are you talking about? You'll find out soon. So that's that. Enjoy your newlywed life, I'm done here. I'll come back for my things later. After dropping that bombshell, I left the house. From inside, I could hear Steve's serious voice. What do you mean I'm sterile? If I'm sterile, how could you get pregnant? Whose child is it? That's. There was another man besides me? That's. Tell me everything, spill it all. Stop, don't be violent. I'm pregnant. If the child isn't useful, then there's no point. Why were you cheating with another man? But I just really wanted to get married. I really wanted to be with Steve. You kept saying you'd divorce, but you never did. And a child, we never managed to have one. I thought if I didn't do something, another woman would end up having his child, so I panicked. Another woman? Yes, if I had a child quickly, Steve could relax, knowing the succession issue was resolved. That's true, but I thought my position would be secure if I could have a child. And then, when I really did get pregnant, you said we'd divorce immediately. I thought everything would go well. But who could have guessed that Steve was sterile? Yeah, I'm shocked too. It was all for you, Steve. That's right. It really was. If I'm sterile, then all we need to do is safely have and raise this child. If we make this child the successor, everything will work out. So, no matter what, this child has to be a boy. That's right, if we can't have any more children. Even if this one is a girl, I can have another child with another man. If that child is a boy, he can be the successor. I see. No matter the truth from you, Rebecca, if I deny it and say, look, there is a child, no one can further deny that. If it's you and me, we can make that happen. That's right, this is a match of interests. If it's for making a child a successor, I'll do whatever it takes with other men. And I'll make sure to carry a boy. That's right. Since I don't love you, it doesn't matter what happens with other men. That's right, a perfect win-win. Yes, exactly. Win-win. Rebecca has no children. No matter how things turn out, they have to make this child the successor. That means they have no choice but to make me from a president candidate to the next president. Just to clarify, there's no chance they'll make Rebecca the president, right? That won't happen. No matter that Rebecca is the daughter, she's a woman. There's no way a woman will become the president. That's right. A woman as a president, especially of such a large corporation, just doesn't happen. Yes, that's right. So, you must safely deliver the baby in your belly. With that decision made, the two of them submitted the divorce papers to the city hall. About 2 weeks later, they filed the marriage registration and contacted me with great joy. Rebecca. Ah, Mary. You seem in high spirits. Of course. We just officially became husband and wife. Now there's nothing to worry about. What were you worried about until now? After stealing someone else's husband. You don't think another woman could take him just because you're married, do you? Even if he is taken, I won't agree to a divorce. He can play around elsewhere as he likes. I'll do as I please too. Is that what marriage is? Yes, it's the new form of marriage. If that works for you, then fine. I can't understand it. You're just too rigid. Anyway, congratulations. Now I'm soon to be the president's wife. How about it? Want to go shopping together sometime? You're still the president's daughter, so you can shop elegantly, right? Sure, I'm not short on money, but I'll absolutely not go shopping with you. No need to hold a grudge. I'm not holding a grudge. I just don't need to hang out with someone who's not a friend. Well, that's fine. Do as you like. I've secured my seat as the wife of a large corporation's president. Is that why you called? Yes. I just had to tell you. I see, well understood. I'm busy, so I'm going to hang up now. After hanging up, I looked at the disconnected smartphone and smiled. This is just the beginning. I'll teach you just how selfish and full of holes your actions are. Be prepared. Muttering this, I started to act on a certain plan. A few days later, I called Steve to initiate my plan. Long time no see. Congratulations on your marriage. Hey, thanks to you giving up on me, we're happily married over here. Is that so? By the way, please return the house. What? Return the house? After all this time? You said you didn't want it. I never said I didn't want it. When you said you would take it, I just said I didn't mind. That's why I emphasized it so many times. Me not minding means I don't know about anyone else's opinion. What? What are you talking about? That house is yours, right? I can't afford such a large house. That house is my father's asset. The president's? Yes, when my father got married, he lent it to us for free. So now that we're divorced, it needs to be returned. That's ridiculous. You might think so, but this is reality. You just didn't know the reality. So, you're telling me to get out? That's what it comes down to. All the furniture in that house was bought by my father, so you can't take anything with you. If we're kicked out of here, where are we supposed to go? We're about to have a child. That's your problem, so I don't know. Can't you do something? No, I can't. If you stay there, it'll lead to a lawsuit for unlawful detention. Unlawful detention? You're going to be the president, so it's better for you not to be questioned for a crime, don't you think? That's true, but if you become a criminal, your dream of being the president will vanish. So, it's decided that I'm going to be the president? Yes, you're going to be the president. That's great. Then, there's no problem leaving this house. I might as well rent a luxury apartment. Well, it's up to you what you do. Do you know when the official appointment will be announced? The one about me becoming the president. It should be very soon. Is that so? I'm really going to be the president, huh? It has to be me, no one else could be the president. Congratulations. Ah, thank you. Despite the divorce, you still care about me, you really did love me. I thought. As if. How could you even think I loved you? What an idiot. However, Steve happily ended the call. Sometime later, Steve received his appointment. But the document appointed him as the president of a subsidiary, not the main company. Why am I being sent to a subsidiary? It was supposed to be the main company's president. Upon hearing it was a subsidiary, Mary was furious. No, it's just the first step. I'll be the president at the subsidiary, and if I improve performance there, then it will be the main company. Yes, in about 3 to 5 years, I should be able to become the president of the main company. Really? Yes, really. Naturally. But anyway, I'm still a president now. Good thing I rented this luxury apartment. If I hadn't become a president, I wouldn't have been able to afford the rent. But it turns out the information from Rebecca wasn't false. That's good, if you can really get back to the main company. Did you talk to the president about the child? No, now that it's come to this, there's no need to talk. It's settled that I'll become the main company's president. After that, I'll make sure the current president becomes the chairman. Then, I'll kick that person out of the main company. With that, the company will be mine. Make sure you secure it. Of course. Then you'll have to give birth to about 5 kids, doesn't matter if they're boys or girls. We'll marry them off strategically to expand the company. Leave it to me. However, the subsidiary's performance did not improve as the two had hoped. Has the performance improved? That's the thing, it's completely hopeless. Why? It's been a year? You've been president for a year and it's still hopeless. You can't become the main company's president like this. That's true. I've been trying, but for some reason, the sales just won't go up. Why don't you crack the whip on your employees? Threaten to fire them if they don't get new clients, they'll probably try harder. If there are employees who can't work hard for the company, it's better if they're not around. It'll save on personnel costs. That's a good point. As long as there are a few employees, let them make the others work harder. That's the way. Harassed daily by Mary about progress, Steve took the drastic step of firing employees who couldn't develop new business. As a result, the remaining employees had to handle even more work, and the company's operations started to falter. However, oblivious to this reality, Steve and Mary became tyrants, running the company as they pleased. Then, a personnel transfer notice was issued. There's a personnel transfer notice. Mary, acting like the president's wife, would come to the company every day and boss around the employees. One day, she eagerly read the notice, hoping it was about moving to the main company. What's this? What? It's about Steve moving to the main company, right? No. Rebecca has been appointed as the president of the main company. What? You're joking. Stop joking around. Shocked and panicked, Mary read the notice, and indeed, my name was listed there, Representative Director President, Rebecca Brown. Why has this happened? This is ridiculous. A woman as the president of such a large company. Steve. Go to the main office and complain. Spurred on by Mary, Steve hurried to the president's office. Hey. What's this all about? Arriving at the president's office, Steve slammed the personnel notice on the large desk. Is there something wrong with this personnel notice? Did you find a typo? That's not it. Why are you the president? It was decided by the board of directors. I didn't participate in the board meeting. You're on assignment, right? You don't even have the right to attend the meetings. What? Even though I'm on assignment, I'm still part of the main company. That's true. But if someone from the main company is embezzling, they can't really be considered part of it, can they? What? What I had placed on the desk was evidence of embezzlement. It detailed the embezzlement Steve had committed while he was at the main company. You hid it quite cleverly, using your position as a manager, but you didn't think it would be discovered? Silent, huh? Anyway, someone like you could never become a president with actions like these. This kind of thing. Everyone does this kind of thing, don't they? Sure, if you check thoroughly, even a clerk might be taking home pens or making personal copies. But, embezzling such a large amount of money and denying it? Moreover, doing this less than a year after being assigned? The evidence I presented was of the embezzlement at the subsidiary. I don't know about this. I haven't done such a thing at the current company. Do you think I can believe that? This isn't something I did. In reality, the previous president had committed the embezzlement. Knowing this, I had been saving this information to corner Steve. There's evidence right here. You can see it in this ledger. There's unauthorized withdrawal, isn't there? I've just been assigned. I wouldn't do such a thing at the assignment place. Even though you say you've just been assigned, it's been a year. And since you did it at the main office, saying you haven't done it isn't believable. Besides, you have a lot of debt, don't you? Didn't you use it for that? How do you know that? This is a corporation, a major one at that. We thoroughly investigate people we can't trust. When I looked into it, it seems you've borrowed quite a sum. Expecting me to believe you under these circumstances is impossible. Plus, you keep firing employees who don't perform as you wish, burdening the remaining staff with even more work and forcing them to do unpaid overtime. Do you think a company can function this way? Employees aren't robots generating money for you to embezzle. I really don't know anything about it. I haven't done anything. This is a conspiracy. Someone is trying to frame me. Bringing down a small fry like you wouldn't benefit anyone. Or is someone holding a grudge against you? I haven't done anything to be resented by anyone. I thought. I resent you, though. Anyway, normally this would be a case for disciplinary action, but if we fire you, you won't be able to repay the embezzled money. Can I remain as the president? Well, our company will sever ties with you. But I'll give you that subsidiary. Huh, that company for me? Yes. You're going to have a child soon, right? Work hard to grow that company and pass on the president's chair to your child. Of course, you'll have to fully repay the embezzled amount. This way, your future is secure, right? Ah, thank you. Rebecca really does care about me. I truly appreciate it. I thought, no need for thanks. Like you could grow that company. Steve happily returned to Mary, but he was oblivious that the real hell was just beginning. The subsidiary had no funds. Cut off from the main company and with previous misappropriations by the former president, there was no money to pay suppliers. Suppliers were demanding payments, and without their materials, nothing could proceed. Furthermore, employees gradually resigned, requiring severance payments. This made it even difficult to pay salaries. Eventually, Steve was left alone in the company, and the few who came for interviews were worthless. No decent person showed up. Of course, I had a hand in this situation. It's hopeless. Why does everything I do fail? It would be better if the company didn't exist. Thinking this, Steve finally decided to close the company. However, he couldn't resolve the payments to suppliers, who then sued him. With no work and unable to repay, he ultimately declared bankruptcy, leading him to a miserable life. Every day, Mary would berate him, blaming his sloppy planning for their downfall. If you had let me handle it, it would have been fine, but all you told were lies. This is the worst. Mary continued to scream, and the child, frightened by her voice, cried. Steve always had to console the child. Amidst this, a bill for compensation arrived. Huh, what? This bill for compensation? What's going on? It was the compensation from when I divorced Steve. More than a year had passed since our divorce, but I decided now was the time to claim it. Given that we both were presidents, I demanded a significant amount. Steve was shocked, having not anticipated this. I've declared bankruptcy, so I shouldn't have to pay. When the bill arrived, Steve called, screaming. Oh, that's too bad. Even if you declare bankruptcy, you still have an obligation to pay compensation. That's ridiculous. Steve aged rapidly from the shock, his hair turning white. But that wasn't the end, as Mary, burdened by the compensation, left him with their child. Left alone, Steve desperately asked me for a chance to start over, but I had no intention of reconciling with such a calculating person. I told him, I hope you fall into hell. And hung up. After that, Steve, unable to afford the rent for the luxury apartment, moved to a dilapidated apartment. Despite his luxurious tastes, he couldn't do anything about his situation. He tried to start over, but the only company that hired him was a small sales firm. Knowing he had found a job, I decided to send him a bill for the embezzled amount. He said he shouldn't have to pay because he had declared bankruptcy, but embezzlement obligations don't disappear so easily. Despite visiting several lawyers, the answer was the same. When he asked them to defend him, knowing I was the opponent, no one would take his case, and he ended up paying a substantial amount. However, with the compensation on top of the embezzlement money, he struggled, and eventually committed embezzlement at his new job, got caught, and ended up in prison. Now, without the struggle of living, he wouldn't have any troubles until his release, but after that, a massive debt would still be waiting, making his life unbearable. As for Mary, I checked to see how she was doing. She had put their child up for adoption and was enjoying a romance with a wealthy man. However, there was a catch. This man was involved in shady business dealings, and eventually, like Steve, she ended up in prison. The world is full of pitfalls you never see coming. Has that poor old hag finally kicked the bucket? I glared at the man, annoyed by his words. My ex-husband, who ran off with his mistress, leaving his blind mother behind. It was hard to believe he was the son of that once kind-hearted woman. His crude remarks brought my anger to its boiling point. You must have had it rough, huh? Well, now you're free. But, come on, someone your age, there's only so much freedom you can enjoy, right? His obnoxious laughter echoed as I smiled sweetly, hiding my fury. Yeah, I got the $3 million inheritance. So I'll be living freely from now on. The smile vanished from my ex-husband's face. Little did he know, soon he'd be on his knees begging for my forgiveness. My name is Emily. I'm 63 years old. I got married young and ended up living with my in-laws. They were kind people, but my husband was a disappointment. We divorced 10 years ago when I was 53. At that time, our eldest daughter, Mia, was 18, and our son, John, was 15, right when education costs were the highest. On top of that, my mother-in-law was blind. Taking care of the kids and my mother-in-law was far from easy. I met my husband, Tom, at work. I was 18 when I joined the company, and he was 24, 2 years out of college. He was older than me and seemed reliable, so I admired him. Tom was always looking after me when I was still inexperienced, and he had a caring nature. Despite being popular, for some reason, he took a liking to me and asked me out. When we got engaged, I visited his parents for the first time. His father had trouble walking, and his mother was blind. I was deeply moved, seeing how Tom supported them while managing his job. However, my own parents were against the marriage. They were worried that marrying into a family with obvious caregiving responsibilities would be too much for me. But Tom's parents were such wonderful people, and I was still young. I ignored my parents' concerns and went ahead with the marriage. My parents were so angry that they cut ties with me, but by then, I had a new family. When you're young, you feel invincible. Nothing seemed scary at the time. After we got married, I quit my job. I took it upon myself to care for my in-laws and manage the household, so that my husband could focus on his work. My in-laws were so grateful to me and treated me like their own daughter. They always expressed their thanks and never forgot to show their concern for me. Spending so much time with them made caregiving challenging, but it wasn't a burden. My husband worked late every day, and I believed everything was going well in our home. One day, I ran into an old colleague from work while coming back from the grocery store. Naturally, the conversation turned to my husband and me. My colleague said, "Tom is such a great husband. He always leaves work early because he says you're having a hard time. He's really something, isn't he?" I couldn't believe my ears. Tom never came home before 10 p.m. That was hardly early. It had to be some sort of mistake. Still, I couldn't say anything at the time. So I awkwardly smiled and replied, "Yes, that's right." Later that evening, I mentioned it to my husband, intending to test him a little. "You've been coming home late a lot lately. Couldn't you come back earlier? Your dad seems to feel bad about having me, a woman, help him with everything. At least you could help him with his bath." But before I could finish, Tom yelled at me. "What? I'm working. I'm not playing around. Tell Dad to stop being so picky." Your father didn't say anything. I just thought he might feel that way. It was clear my husband had no intention of helping with the caregiving. On top of that, he seemed overly defensive. I had a sinking feeling that my suspicions were right. But at the time, I couldn't bring myself to acknowledge it. I was afraid of what would happen if I pressed him and uncovered something I didn't want to know. After all, I had married him against my parents' wishes, and I had nowhere to go. I also worried about my in-laws. In the end, I decided to continue on with my life as usual. One day, I thought about getting an electric wheelchair for my father-in-law. He was using a cane and a regular wheelchair. But with an electric one, he could enjoy short walks. I imagined pushing my blind mother-in-law in her wheelchair alongside him, so we could all go a bit farther on our outings. I shared the idea with my husband, fully expecting him to agree. But his reaction was less than enthusiastic. "Really? Do we need that?" He looked pained as he replied. "I'm barely keeping us afloat on my income alone. Do we really need to waste money like that?" It was true we weren't wealthy. But I didn't see it as a waste if it made his parents even a little bit happier. "Then, how about we pay it off little by little using your parents' pensions? Maybe we could borrow a bit from the bank too?" At that, my husband seemed somewhat convinced and said, "Just don't make it my problem." Of course, I couldn't tell my in-laws exactly what he said. Instead, I told them that he'd agreed to let us take out a loan. And my father-in-law was delighted. We went to the bank together, got a loan, and purchased the electric wheelchair. My in-laws were very happy with it. However, not long after, my father-in-law passed away. Both my mother-in-law and I were heartbroken, but my husband muttered, "He just left us with debt. I told you we didn't need to buy it." I was sure my mother-in-law heard him. I felt incredibly guilty. It was just the two of us, my mother-in-law and me, living in the house now. Even though she was blind, there were some things she could manage on her own inside the house, which lessened the burden on me quite a bit. Around that time, my husband suggested we start thinking about having children. I had once doubted him, but hearing that, I convinced myself that I must have misunderstood something. We eventually had 2 children together. But unfortunately, my husband didn't change even after they were born. He still didn't care about anything related to the household. I was overwhelmed with housework and raising the children. But at least my mother-in-law seemed happy, which was a small comfort. Though she couldn't see the grandchildren, after my father-in-law passed away. Having the kids around seemed to lift her spirits. She'd been so down, but now she smiled more, listening to the children's lively voices. Despite everything, we managed to live happily enough. Still, just as my colleague once said, my husband continued to come home late from work. I'll never forget what he said at my father-in-law's funeral. He didn't show any love toward his mother or our children. Lately, he would even leave on his days off, saying he was going to work. And I'd stopped feeling any affection for him. I began to think that as long as he brought in money, that was enough. Our broken marriage continued like this. But our children grew up to be kind and thoughtful. The real change in our family came in the spring, when our daughter was 18 and preparing to go to college. I'm heading to work. It was a Saturday, a day he was supposed to be off. I stopped him before he left. You promised to take your mom to the hospital today. It was a promise he'd made just a few days earlier. Today was my mother-in-law's health checkup. And it was also the day we were set to get the keys to our daughter's new apartment, where she'd be living on her own during college. We'd known about these plans in advance. So I had asked him to take his mother to the hospital. What? That's your job as a housewife. He shouted at me. I told you, today's the day Mia gets the keys to her apartment. We need to set everything up for her before she starts college, and I said I'd go with her. When I snapped back at him, my husband got angry too. I had no memory of ever talking back or defying him before. The fact that I was standing up to him for the first time seemed to make him even more agitated. I didn't sign up for this. I married you because I thought I'd be stuck with an old man. And an old hag who no one else wanted. And now you want me to take care of her? If you can't take her, let her go by herself. I was speechless. How could anyone be this cruel? I had sensed for some time that he didn't care about his mother. But to suggest sending a blind woman out alone? And to insult me like that. It was unbearable to find out the real reason he had married me. I was filled with regret. That's enough. That's all I said to him, finally giving up on expecting anything from him. Satisfied that I didn't argue back, he said, "All right then, you take care of the old hag and the kids." And with that, he left the house and never came back. In the end, our daughter had to handle getting the keys to her new apartment on her own and buy everything she needed for her new life. Meanwhile, I took my mother-in-law to her health checkup. Somehow, we made it through the day. Everyone noticed that my husband hadn't returned, but no one said a word about it. A few days later, a letter arrived. It was from my husband. There was no return address, only his name. And inside was a divorce agreement and a brief letter. He wrote that he was living with his mistress now. Didn't want anything to do with the debt left by his parents. And told me to live my life without him. I was exhausted. If this is how things were going to be, cutting ties with him would make me happier. That's what I thought. Before submitting the divorce papers, I told my kids and my mother-in-law. The person who took it the hardest was my mother-in-law. "I'm so sorry." She just kept repeating that, crying as she held my hand. "I've been happy enough with you, Emily, and Mia and John. But once you're divorced, I'll be a stranger." I'll live on my own from now on. It'll take some time, but I'll move out. That's what she whispered. I responded a bit more firmly. You are like a real mother to me, and to the kids. You're their one and only grandmother. You don't need to worry about anything. Even if I divorce, we're still family. Let's keep living together just as we have been. Hearing that, she sobbed and thanked me. But I couldn't ignore the fear that lingered in the back of my mind. Even if my husband was only an ATM, his presence had provided some financial security. Now, he was gone. I desperately looked for a job, but after years of being a housewife, no one wanted to hire me. Both Mia and John offered to work. When I was beginning to lose hope, my mother-in-law said, "Don't worry about anything. Let the kids go to school as usual. Emily, you don't need to work either. Leave it to me." We were puzzled by her words, but as she promised, nothing in our lives changed. In fact, we were living more comfortably than when my husband was still around. I submitted the divorce papers, and my mother-in-law wanted to file a missing person report for my ex-husband. But I didn't want to see him again. Still, I knew she wanted to see her son, so we filed the report. However, my ex-husband was never found. We continued to live as a family of 4, creating many happy memories. 2 years ago, my mother-in-law passed away and joined my father-in-law. She never got to see her son again. Even though he was her child, there was no way to contact him. When I managed to find his address, no one lived there anymore. We had a small funeral for her with just the 3 of us, and we said our goodbyes. And now, standing in front of me is my ex-husband. I was out shopping when he suddenly appeared in front of me. I thought I must be mistaken and tried to ignore him, but he kept staring at me. He recognized me. He must have thought the same, because he looked over at the much younger woman standing beside him and spoke up, showing her off. "Emily, right? Still looking as miserable as ever. That's a bit rude, huh?" The woman beside him giggled as she said that. It was clear they were mocking me, and I sighed. I was about to walk past them when my ex-husband said, "Has the poor old hag kicked the bucket?" I froze in my tracks and glared at him. "The poor old hag? Who are you talking about?" He snickered and replied, "You know who I mean. That blind old woman you were stuck living with. Heard through the grapevine she passed. Must have been tough for you, huh? Well, now you're free. Though for someone your age, there's only so much freedom you can enjoy, right?" His disgusting laughter echoed in the air. My anger reached its boiling point. But I knew that reacting now would only play into his hands. I forced a smile, hiding my rage. "Yeah, I got $3 million from the inheritance. So now I'm living freely without having to work. Thanks for your concern." "What?" The smile disappeared from my ex-husband's face, though he had just been mocking me moments ago. Well then. As I tried to walk past him, he stood there dumbfounded. Then, in a panic, he called after me. Wait. $3 million in inheritance? What are you talking about?" "What do you mean, what am I talking about?" "I mean exactly what I said. Thanks for disappearing, by the way. It made the inheritance process go smoothly without you." My ex-husband's face turned pale. Good, I thought. I hadn't planned on telling him anything. But he deserved to know just how shallow and foolish he really was. You've got to be kidding me. I'm her son. How come I never heard about such a large inheritance? I should have a right to some of that money. I couldn't help but smirk at his words. Oh, but you weren't around. You know, right? If you go missing for 7 years, the law treats it as if you're dead. What? So, in your mother's will, the inheritance came to our son, our daughter, and me. There's no place for you anymore. He stood there, dumbfounded, his expression ridiculous. I nearly laughed out loud. It was only after my mother-in-law passed away that I realized she had planned this all along, asking me to file a missing person report for her son. The substantial inheritance my mother-in-law had left behind. A man who introduced himself as a lawyer came and explained everything to us. It turned out that my mother-in-law's family had been landowners. Like me, she had been estranged from her family, but she still had the right to inherit. When her parents passed away, she quietly took the inheritance without telling anyone. Thanks to her, we were able to live comfortably without worrying about anything. I remember asking her once, "Mother, how do you manage your money? If it's just from your pension, please feel free to spend it however you like." My mother-in-law smiled and said, "I'm spending it exactly how I want, living happily with my family." That's what she told me. From the way she used her money, I knew it wasn't just her pension. But it was her money, and given our situation, we gratefully accepted her generosity. The inheritance she received was far more than she could ever spend in her lifetime. The issue was my husband. If something had happened to her, he would have inherited everything. But she didn't want him to have it. When she discussed this with the lawyer, my husband disappeared. She felt it was a sign that he had severed ties with us. Although she was sad to be separated from us. She had planned to move into a nursing home, thinking she wouldn't burden us. And would spend the inheritance until there was nothing left. But both our son and daughter, as well as myself, insisted that she was family and that she should stay with us. My mother-in-law said there was nothing in the world that made her happier than that. My mother-in-law had wanted to leave the inheritance to us. So she followed the lawyer's advice and filed a missing person report for my husband. By law, after he had been gone for 7 years, he was considered legally dead. A year after that, my mother-in-law passed away. And her inheritance was passed on to her grandchildren, our son and daughter, in place of my husband. Although I wasn't entitled to inherit anything, my mother-in-law left a will that included me as a beneficiary. This way, we were able to receive what she had wanted to give us. You left, and your mother took care of everything. Mia's tuition, John's, and all our living expenses. Thanks to her, we were able to live happily. So, thank you for leaving. My ex-husband stood there, pale, his mouth gaping like a fish. Serves him right, I thought. After that, he started contacting us, ranting about how he was entitled to a portion of the inheritance. This from the man who had been completely silent for years. What a piece of work. People who are legally dead don't get a share of the inheritance. I told him that over and over. Still, he wasn't satisfied and demanded we sit down and talk. I consulted our lawyer. For him to claim any inheritance, he'd need to revoke the missing person declaration and go through a lot of legal procedures. In most cases like this, the grandchildren keep the inheritance. We had no intention of giving him a single penny. I relayed the lawyer's advice to him. If he wanted to inherit, he would also need to pay inheritance tax. When I told him to take care of all that, he fell silent. The kids were present during the conversation as well. I can't take time off work. I don't have time for paperwork. And inheritance tax? I shouldn't have to pay that. You guys should pay my share too. I supported you for years. The least you can do is handle this for me." His audacity left us speechless. Apparently, he was working a day labor job now. And missing even one day was problematic for him. The job he had while we were married? He got fired after repeatedly skipping work without notice. When I asked why he left that job and why he was struggling so much financially, he admitted he had debts, thanks to his former mistress. He'd been moving from place to place, working day-to-day jobs just to pay off what he owed. "You understand, right?" he said, but I couldn't muster even a drop of sympathy. "That woman you were with didn't work out, huh? Then who was that woman I saw you with recently?" Puffing out his chest, my ex-husband replied, "She's the one I've been searching for all my life." He was clearly lost in his own delusions. Our son, John, was trying hard to hold back his laughter. "Are you married to her?" I asked. "Well, no. We've only been together for 6 months." My ex-husband mumbled in a small voice. That was enough to send our son into fits of laughter. My daughter and I were too stunned to say anything, simply sighing at the absurdity in front of us. "And what about the woman you left with when we got divorced?" "She left. Said she couldn't make me happy." He said it so casually, without even realizing that he had been dumped. He must have gone through woman after woman, never understanding the problem was him. "You're not young anymore. Stop pretending you are, old man." I couldn't help but give him that piece of advice, feeling embarrassed for him. But she's the one, my soulmate. Hearing that, I realized that it was pointless to say anything more to him. At least I had found out his address after running into him again. He was living in the next town, in an apartment under a woman's name. My son, John, ended up buying the entire building and becoming the landlord. Grandma gave us that money, and it'd be a waste just to let it sit. I figured investing in real estate would be a smart move. That's what John said. I thought he might have done it to help his father, but that wasn't the case. In fact, if the rent was even a day late, John was quick to go and demand it. The previous landlord had been lenient, but not my son. Mom went through so much because of him. He chose this selfish lifestyle, so he should struggle more than you ever did. It was John's way of punishing his father. My ex-husband had never done anything fatherly for the kids, so it was only natural that they had their own feelings about it. Eventually, unable to endure his new life, my ex-husband came to me, fell to his knees, and begged for forgiveness. "I'm so sorry. I was wrong to leave everything to you, including taking care of my parents and the kids." Seeing him like that made me sigh. He was desperate. "But, I have my own life now. Couldn't you ask John to lower the rent just a little?" he asked with teary eyes. It must have been tough for him. I don't know. If you had at least been a good father to the kids, things wouldn't have turned out like this. You failed as a husband, as a father, and as a person. Now, what do you have left? What was your life even about? You should think long and hard about that. With that, my ex-husband quietly left. His figure looked so small as he walked away. In the end, after repeatedly failing to pay rent, he was forced to leave the apartment. He moved into an old, drafty building that was about 50 years old. I heard he's still working day-to-day jobs, struggling to make ends meet. The soulmate he had been with when I saw him that day? Apparently, she left him when he moved out of the apartment. He had been paying her living expenses, and since he couldn't afford rent anymore, it wasn't surprising she left him. In fact, he should be thankful she stayed with him as long as she did. She was still young, and like me back then, she probably didn't see who he truly was. As for us, we're living happily now, thanks to my mother-in-law. Just like John said, we invested in real estate and stocks. And now we have passive income that allows us to travel and enjoy life. And Mia is getting married. Her fiancé is a kind man, and he treats me well too. Our family is growing, and our happiness will only increase from here. I can appreciate this joy all the more because we overcame such a difficult past.